There were references there in that speech to the future, and I want to focus on that now by meeting our leaders of tomorrow. They're joining us for our closing panel discussion. These are the rising stars from the industry, and they're going to discuss not just their journeys, but also the bank of the future. So let's meet that talent. Give them your biggest welcome. You've been lubricated by the champagne, so you've got no excuse not to. James Houston from Lloyds Banking, please come and join me. Extend the welcome to Matthew Huxtable from Ziglu. Come on, enthusiasm, enthusiasm. Nikki Bunn from Pay.UK. And last but not by no means least, Gerard Lavin from Citrix Systems. Please, it's good to see you. It's great to see all of you. Thank you so much for being here. No need to be nervous because I don't bite and neither does the audience, although this is a panel discussion, so there will be questions afterwards. They are very nice people, so don't panic. They're not going to hurt you. But look, very, very briefly, if you could just introduce yourselves by telling us all what it is that you do. Starting first with you, James. You're from Lloyds Banking. What do you do there?
Yeah, so I'm at Lloyds Banking Group in Group Strategy, having recently moved from my role in mortgage intermediaries. Last year, I won the Audience Award at the Young Banker of the Year competition, and I have a keen interest in sustainability and purpose-driven banking.
Excellent. Matthew.
Hello, my name's Matthew Huxtable, or Matt. I'm the CTO and lead the tech team at Ziglu, which is a fintech in the crypto investments and wealth management space. I'm very interested in technology and how we can harness that to create the new hybrid world of banking going forward.
Great. Nikki.
Hi everyone, I am Nikki, the head of brand and marketing at Pay.UK, which is the company that runs all those critical systems that make sure you all get paid or can pay your bills. And yeah, my role is to sort of drive awareness and understanding of those products and services, and I've got a real interest in customer experience and brand and how that impacts on the future of banking.
Okay, and Gerard.
Hi, Gerard Lavin. I'm the EMEA Chief Technology Officer at Citrix. I deal with some of our largest customers talking about their strategy and their long-term goals. I also lead a sustainability team within Citrix as well, looking at how we can help our customers achieve more sustainable outcomes in the banking sector and other sectors as well. And I think despite this being a rising star, I'm probably the oldest person on stage as well.
Look, you're never too old to be a star, so please do not do yourself down.
Absolutely, my inner star is shining.
Yeah, but you know what, it's not your fault you're 21, it's not a crime.
Yeah. Maybe after a glass of bubbly.
Look, you know what, it's great to see all of you, and congratulations so far in your careers. You're shooting stars from the sky, and that's what we like to see. But look, this is a question to all of you, so let me start first with you, James, and then let's move it along the panel, because look, I want to focus on the future of banking on a macro scale, and then we can zoom in on the different elements as we go along. So let's fast forward to 2035. You guys will be here. I can't speak for me, but what do you think banking is going to look like in 2035 from the customer relationship and product development to employees and the brick and mortar bank? If I am around, what can I expect?
Yeah, so I think 2035, I think the market's going to be much more dynamic. So when we look at much of the incumbent banks, digital transformation is well underway. So we're going to see that the incumbents can be much more agile in their approach to the market. But also I think that what's really interesting is that we'll be halfway towards our net zero 2050 targets. And if we look at the Bank of England stress test and the different scenarios we face, there's the risk there that we're in the late action scenario. And I think the banking industry will have a great role to play there, in terms of, as you spoke about product innovation, to try and help businesses and customers reach those goals in a situation where we're having rapid sectoral adjustment to try and reach those targets.
Okay, so more agile organisations. Mm-hmm. Is that something you support, Matthew? Is that what you visualise for the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we're already seeing, but what we'll see developed a lot more over the coming years, and certainly out to 2035, is more of this understanding of the consumer and how they want the personalized experiences of one almost, where they want to feel like they're special to the organization and the organization is speaking to them, as a unique customer, as a unique individual, rather than as a mass. And I think we're already seeing that change happening. I think that will be refined. I think that will be embedded. And we'll really develop that as part of wider understanding of the sustainability of the marketplace as well, and the products and services that we're providing.
Okay, so music to your ears, Nikki, that we're going to understand the customer a lot better without being intrusive.
Yeah, 100% agree with Matt. I think we'll definitely see a move towards like a mosaic model where kind of customers will choose different products from different types of service providers. You can see that, so prevalently already. I was on the tube today, and I think every out-of-home advert I saw for a financial services brand was one that wasn't here, maybe like 5 years ago. So you're definitely seeing that diversification of the providers that are out there. We've seen that with our service, the current account switch service. When we launched, there was 30 brands. Now there's like 50. So I think customers being able to build that bespoke model that completely suits their personal needs across a plethora of different providers will be absolutely where we go forwards.
Okay, so really, Gerard, what they're talking about here, what Nikki's talking about, is a more empowered customer. People like me are going to be keeping you guys on your toes, even more than we do already.
Yeah, even more so. I think more empowered, as you said, but also the bank at that stage is going to be both more invisible and more connected than ever. So there's the potential, as we see this explosion of APIs, where we see 5G being ubiquitous, as we see the hyperscalers kind of enter into this marketplace, your ability to consume banking products, you're going to have more choice than you ever had. Like your driverless taxi is going to be able to sell your mortgage at the same time. But I think the difficulty will be when everything's so embedded and so connected for brands to really rise in that place, because your ability to interact with financial services can occur in places that haven't been traditionally considered sort of FS interactions at all.
Okay, so look, interesting visions of the future. Let's now focus on innovation. It's not going to happen without that. I'm going to try to avoid the word Zoom. I've been using it for most of the day. But Nikki, what is it that members of the digital generation want and above all need from product innovation? What is it that we need to focus on, or rather that you need to focus on?
Yeah, I think it's about customer experience, as we've all alluded to, and not just more features. Customers want, exactly as Gerard said, the integration within their existing services they have. They want to be able to check their bank balance on their watch as they're in a shop. They want to be able to have banking that really fits into their life. I think predicting in 2035 is always going to be very difficult. If you look back 13 years, you probably wouldn't have been able to predict where we are now in terms of we didn't have mobile banking, faster payments. One of our services had just launched, and now can you imagine a world where you can't instantly bank transfer? So I think it's very difficult to pinpoint what those innovations will be, but it will absolutely be, instant, really accessible and really interoperable between whatever else I'm doing with my life.
Okay, so James, let's flip things on the head and look at this from a lending point of view. So what is it, or where do you think the product innovation is going to take us next, be it that you want to borrow for your car, your mortgage, or your divorce?
Yeah, exactly. So I think Nikki hit the nail on the head there when she said that we don't know what's going to be happening in 2035. But from a lending point of view, I mean, there's so many emerging trends we've heard about today, open banking, buy now, pay later. I'm really interested in, inclusion, environment. So I might just touch on inclusion in terms of housing. So in terms of mortgages, homes are continuing to become less affordable. And we've seen lots of innovation in that space from both large and small providers. So now you can, shared ownership, the rise of deposit boosters, income boosters. You can even buy property with friends and family. So I think we're going to continue to see innovation there that makes more homes affordable and help people onto the housing ladder. But also we need to think more than just the mortgage market. Actually, I've also seen innovation in the rental market. So at Lloyds Banking Group, we launched Citrix Living last year, which aims to support the provision of good quality housing in the rental sector in the UK. And I think that's a good example of another purpose-driven innovation to help all sectors. But that's touch on the mortgages point, and that's that.
Okay, so it's a good point there. Matthew, you're coming at this from a non-retail perspective. So do you see something like crypto, for example, going mainstream? There's a lot of noise about that, the viability or otherwise. And if it does go mainstream, what innovation is going to be needed to make it possible and understandable to dinosaurs like me?
I think you're right. I think crypto has gone through that hype curve, and we're now starting to see more widespread adoption and acceptance of it almost in the market. But I think when you look at crypto and look at what underpins it, actually blockchain technology, going back to the Industrial Revolution, we've seen technology responding to the socio-economic and political needs of the time. And I think blockchain, just like we've seen, revolution in the 60s with digitization in businesses, and then, eventually fast forward 50 years and I've got a computer more powerful than the computer we sent to the moon in my pocket. I think we're going to see we're seeing blockchain really be there as a way of supporting that shift in world thinking and in the needs for us to have a better understanding of trust in each other and in organizations and and ultimately in the people that look after our money. Not just money, but money is one of the,
But it's interesting as well, the T word creeping up again, trust, absolutely essential in any relationship. And Gerard, I mean, look, whenever we're talking about these innovations, be they crypto, whatever, it comes back to technology. So what are those areas of technology that are the most promising and exciting when it comes to enabling these innovations, regardless of whether it's a new way of actually borrowing to pay your rent or to buy a house or an alternative to hard currency? I mean, how are your teams spearheading these innovations at Citrix? Because these are things that people like me will have to get used to. It's going to be part of our everyday living.
I think there's a number of areas. So as we digitize more and more, and we saw an acceleration in the last 2 years with the C word that we won't use, we're seeing that continuing to accelerate. But we need, number one, to make sure that connectivity, the APIs, the interfaces we deal with, that they're available, that they're high performant for the users, that not only is the UI simple to use, but they're available when they want to have them. And we're under the shadow of continual threat of cybercrime, of outages affecting both the reputation of organizations and their ability to do businesses. So I think that businesses, FSs in general, are investing heavily in the cyber side of things to make sure that their services are available as well. I think the other part that's kind of neglected, well, not necessarily neglected, but it's not quite as cool and as maybe talking about the straightforward CX side, is the employee experience side and the technology to improve that. If you look at a number of the large banks, there may be a veneer of digitization on the outside, but there's still work to be done on the inside. In fact, some of my biggest customers have said it's hard to get people to come back to the office because their home IT experience is so much better now than their office experience, right? They've painted their house with Wi-Fi, they have fantastic experience at home. Bring someone back to the office. But we know that investment in user experience pays off with better engagement from a customer experience. So I think we're going to see a lot of technologies that augment that user experience. We're going to see AI directly augmenting, I think hopefully augmenting more than replacing between now and 2035, especially the high-skilled knowledge workers, and generally providing always-on connectivity no matter where people are. So really taking advantage of the explosion of 5G.
I mean, look, let's stay with the customer experience. Sure. And James, I want to back this to you because, look, how do you think the customer experience must change? Because earlier we were talking to Liam Leahy, and what he was saying is that, look, customers are incredibly empowered. They know what they want, and woe betide you if you fail to supply it.
Yeah, exactly. So I think in terms of customer experience, the winning firms will be those that can meet changing customer demands in terms of products, purpose, and also the channels that they use. So on products, you have to have product innovation to help address societal pain points. In terms of purpose, consumers expect the purpose of their providers to align to their own values. On channels as well, that's a really equally important point. And I think from an intermediary point of view, we don't have to view it as kind of like a zero-sum competitive environment. Actually, you can add the most value for customers by collaborating and partnering with other market participants. And when you remove those frictions to help create a seamless journey for customers, that's how you add the most value for customers and strengthen your own proposition. We've also seen growing channels, so the use of social media. So we've seen some providers use Instagram to drive product engagement. We've seen the growth in high engagement platforms, I know this we spoke about today, like TikTok. And that's beginning to be used within the industry too. One mortgage broker already has over 100,000 followers on TikTok in the UK. And the difference in engagement can be really stark between the two platforms. So for house builders, effectively on Instagram, they receive 1 like per 200 followers that they have. On TikTok, this is 1 like per 6 followers. But again, social media is just one tool out of a range of channels that can help you win the customer experience.
I mean, look, Matthew, come into the conversation because earlier we were talking about the metaverse, okay? And I want to relate the metaverse to the customer experience. How's it going to change that, or the web 3.0? I mean, it's kind of fantastical. My head is wandering here. I mean, what is it going to look like, the customer experience in the metaverse? Are you brave enough to handle this?
I find the concept of metaverse really interesting. It makes me feel old because I realise that
Sorry, it makes you feel old.
Yes. I realise there's new tech now emerging that I need to understand.
Hang on a minute, your generation helped to pioneer this.
We helped pioneer it, right? So I think we're starting to see kind of, that, I guess, a singularity point, to steal a word from the AI space. But I think there is something in the metaverse that needs exploring. We were talking in our team the other day about buying some land in the metaverse next to Snoop Dogg and opening a bank branch there.
Sorry, can you repeat that, please? You were thinking of buying some land on the metaverse next to Snoop Dogg.
Yes.
He who does Just Eat.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's expensive. We're having problems in the real housing market, and yet land that you can now buy land in the metaverse. It's completely fantastical. I think there's something to explore here, and I certainly think if that's part of the future, then supporting it in some way is important. But we also need to make sure that the platforms that we're using are open and accessible, and that the ultimate platform that we use as this metaverse or virtual reality environment is something that ultimately, coming back to that trust point, people can have trust in.
Sure.
They're not part of a closed shop operated for profit, where the customer is not the user.
So everybody can get involved in this metaverse. So it actually, the customer experience is positive, but it just takes it into something stratospheric. Okay, and Snoop Dogg doesn't necessarily have to be involved in this. But Nikki, look, I mean, this whole idea of the metaverse, the next step in transforming the customer experience that everybody gets on board is in a completely different way. Is it something that resonates with what you're seeing? And what are the predictions that you have for how brand and customer relationships are going to evolve in this new landscape? What can we expect?
Yeah, I think to touch on sort of what I mentioned earlier about the more fragmentation of people's banking, I think customer loyalty is really going to change. I think it's going to become less important. And for those customers that want a bank that's in the metaverse, then they'll go there. But that might not be what that every customer wants. And we're really starting to see that customers will choose different providers based on the best customer experience, metaverse or no metaverse, and that will be how they create their own personal profile. If I think about my experience, I started my first bank account with the one my mum opened for me, and it's the one that she banked with for 20 years. But when I really looked into it and thought, what does that provider give me? It didn't give me, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't giving me what I wanted. And now I've probably got 8 different banking relationships, a different provider for my credit card, one for my mortgage, one for my current account, and they all give me different things. One might be a best mobile app experience, one might be really good interest rates, but I don't feel any loyalty towards them. If somebody comes along and offers me a better service, the current account switch service makes it really easy to switch current accounts, so I've switched probably 4 or 5 times. So as soon as someone comes along and offers me something better, I'll move. So that relationship with the bank, I think, is really going to change, and you're going to have to, as you said earlier, the customer is the one in the power now, and banks are going to have to compete to earn a customer's product, and that might be by offering innovations like space next to Snoop Dogg, but it might not be for every customer.
But I mean, that's really interesting, Gerard, because what I was going to ask you about is one area in the customer experience zone that banks should focus on improving. But I can understand the logic of doing that now, but then you have to ask yourself, what's the point in 20 years' time? Because we can have a chain of metaverse banks, and if Bank A offers land next to Snoop Dogg, Bank B offers land next to Will Smith because we all want to get slapped, then what's the point?
I'm personally won't be building next to Will Smith.
Oh, good.
No, I think there's a couple, and that whole space is emerging. I mean, numbers have said already it's difficult to predict that far ahead. 13 years ago, we probably wouldn't have predicted the impact the iPhone has in all our lives. But I think there's one emerging trend that's just going to get stronger over that time. That's trust. We're seeing now the emergence of the title of the Chief Trust Officer within organizations. And whether the experience is digital or the experience is in branch, I think the fact that it's going to be more diverse, that you're going to be dealing with more and more entities, that you can change more and more easily, that sense of trust, both the trust in the digital side of things and the organization itself, I think that's going to become more and more important.
Right, so if you can actually win the trust, then presumably you can avoid the customer churn.
I don't think you can avoid it, but I think you can potentially reduce it and build some loyalty. And I think there's, we're seeing the emergence of trends of people banking or shopping with organizations that are aligned to their own beliefs, aligned to the things, they're more purpose-driven. I think we're going to see an increase in that. I think as the climate agenda again becomes more and more prevalent, and it's only moving that direction. I think that trust in an organization, trust that, not only that you trust their systems to hold your money or you trust the connection to them, but you trust what they're doing as a business, that their purpose aligns to where you go. I think that's going to be a key differentiator.
Okay, let's broaden things out in the time available before we take questions from the audience. You know the drill. Use the app, send your questions through, and we will try to answer as many of them as we can in the time available. But Nikki, I want to focus on purpose and sustainability, words that we've heard a great deal really this morning, the afternoon, and so on. But to what extent will being purpose-led be at the core of next generation propositions? And above all, how do you communicate that to customers? Because they are going to be very fussy and they may not necessarily want to be loyal.
Yeah, absolutely. And, exactly as Gerard said, we are looking at a generation who are going to see climate change play out in real time. As a generation, it's very well, documented that they are willing to fight for the causes that they believe in. And they are, the Generation Z, or Z, is currently 11 to 25. So in 2035, they're going to be 25 to 40. They're going to be so influential. They're going to be the ones that are going through all the major financial events. They're going to be buying houses or getting loans or, even opening accounts for their own children. So it cannot be denied that purpose-driven is going to be a real key element of that. But just to kind of, labour the point about customer experience, I don't think it will be at the cost of a good customer experience. It's not going to be enough to be able to say, oh yes, we've got a great vision to support climate change if actually your app experience is awful or you're not keeping up with the technology. So yes, it will be really, really important, but there are major retailers at the moment that are still huge and have questionable potential morals, but people still use them because they want to get something delivered to their house that day. And they're not gonna change, I don't think, that behaviour unless you can demonstrate both being purposeful and also delivering great customer experience and authentically as well.
Gerard, you were nodding there in agreement, but look, how are you and the team at Citrix actually making sure that sustainability stays at the heart of future propositions? We're talking about it now. I have no idea whether we'll be talking about it in the same way in 20 or 30 years' time.
I think we'll be talking about it even more, but I'm hopefully after some positive changes. We're a technology company, so we speak directly to our customers about technology changes that can impact their own carbon footprint. I think one part of the equation that's often forgotten, like we talk about sort of impact investing, we talk about specifically what banks can do with their money, but we also have to look about their own footprint as well, of which IT is a large part. So IT consumes 10% of all electricity in Europe. And in fact, by 2030, 70% of the grid in Ireland will be used to power data centres, to the point where I'm worried if I go back on holiday, I won't be able to boil a kettle. So I think there's whole areas that we're helping FS organizations optimize the experience, use lower energy devices for their users, move their compute to areas which are more to take advantage of efficiencies in cloud compute, but also looking at ways where they can interact with their employees and interact with their customers. So don't force people to commute unnecessarily. Use the ability of hybrid work to engage, parts of your workforce who maybe feel marginalized, don't want to come into the office, and also use that to drive down commuting emissions as well. So I think there's broad ways that we can work with customers, and they have knock-on benefits as well to their engagement with their wider community.
And James, green lending products, they're seen as really important at the heart of the roadmap, the lending roadmap of the future in terms of that sustainability. But how do you think this is going to evolve as sustainability becomes even more of a priority for the banks themselves? Yes, they're talking about it, but at some stage it's going to sort of shoot right up there at the top of the priority list.
No, yeah, exactly. So green lending products are vital. And yes, they need to evolve to help the UK economy transition. So again, looking at homes as the example, lenders began by offering green mortgages, for energy efficient EPC A and B properties. And this is because 20% of UK CO2 emissions come from homes. So that was the incentive to incentivize customers. But actually, over 60% of UK properties are rated below a C. And actually, to truly transition the UK economy, what we need is positive impact financing. It's not enough just to finance already energy efficient properties. So we're going to see more greater priority taken towards retrofitting solutions, for example. Also in the electric vehicle space, it's not enough just to kind of give electric vehicle financing. Actually, as an industry, we need to think more about infrastructure, because once certain conditions are met, the transition can kind of, you reach a tipping point where the transition can start to take off and accelerate at a much greater pace. And lastly, I think when we think about lending products and sustainability, we shouldn't just think about the environmental sustainability. Actually, social sustainability is also really important. So that's things like access to housing, improving access to housing, and also tackling racial inequality. So at Lloyds Banking Group, we helped undertake the Black British in Business and Proud report that found that only 13% of black businesses look to a bank for financial support. And that kind of highlights, I think, the importance of sort of looking at lending and sustainable lending at both, looking at both environmental sustainability and social sustainability.
Okay, let me put the final question to Matthew, because what you've all been saying has really resonated with the audience. So what I'm trying to tell you is that there are loads of questions. Okay, so get ready for it. But look, Matthew, you are the guy on blockchain, okay? We talk about it, many of us are using it, etc. It's going to play a huge role in the future of banking. But on the other hand, there are concerns about its energy consumption. We've seen the stories in the news about these mines which have been found. But given that, is blockchain able to enhance sustainability? Because given the amount of power that it uses up, it actually seems to sort of fall outside the sustainability message.
Yeah, this is a really tough one. And I think, we've all seen the news, we've all seen the efficiency claims, particularly around Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is perhaps the worst example of blockchain technology, being the first one. But I like all the points that were talked about here, right from the small on the housing side right up to the data center side at the end. I think companies like Ziglu, where we offer custodial wallet solutions, for example, trades of crypto on our platform don't necessarily hit the blockchain, so we're almost better than holding cash in the wallet. But we've also taken the advantage in our business to look at green aspects, so everything from being one of very few companies to run our own fully cloud-native banking platforms. We benefit from the fate sharing and kind of shared resources of running in a green cloud provider, and we've looked at that. I've looked at that with a lot of care and determination to make sure we make the right choices there. But I think people are asking for this technology. People want this. I don't think that noise will go away. I think we need to see it as a change, and we need to see it not as today's solution, but as a demonstration of what is the art of the possible. And with the money that's flowing into this, I truly believe that the right solutions are coming, even if it's not as perfect as perhaps it could be today. And particularly when you then start to broaden blockchain, it's seen as a home for crypto. But when we look at how it can be used, for example, for the tokenization of assets or tracking of perhaps green credits in relation to home investment or power purchasing, I really think it promises a lot to shake up the status quo of what we're used to.
Okay, fantastic response to that question. Are you ready for questions from the audience? Fantastic. Okay, that's great. Listen, I'm going to start first with a kind of two-in-one, so to speak. But the first question, what advice would you give to other people who are just starting out within the banking industry and are looking to excel in their career? The second part of that question, it's been reserved for you, Nikki, because it's addressed to you. But just generally, who would like to tackle that one? Don't hesitate, 'cause otherwise I just select people. I'm quite ruthless, but go for it.
Yeah. So I already joined the banking industry over 18 months ago, and really what I've done is kind of jumped kind of every opportunity I've had, and I think that's great. It gives you, especially starting from home, you don't get much great exposure, but actually jumping at every opportunity kind of really helps with that.
Okay. Feel free.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I don't work in banking, so I can't answer the question.
I totally agree. I mean, for me, this is my first ever, speaking place, and I had to be convinced by my team, do it. And I was like, oh, I'm really nervous. So absolutely jump at every opportunity. And I think, as the keynote said as well, your network is so important. Mm-hmm. So you make every opportunity you can to meet people. Use like today to meet people and find out what they did in their career. Because I think most of the kind of jobs where I really succeeded and done well at is through the people I've met and the experience they've given me and how they've enabled me to build on my skill set.
Okay, Matthew and Gerard, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
I think I just echo the points that were made. I actually only came into the banking industry 2 years ago myself, and I took this role.
So this was your first role?
This was my first role, yeah. I joined Ziglu as an engineer and gradually, over time, find myself in the CTO position. Ironically, I stepped out of middle management to go back to being an engineer, but working with the people and, you know, both the people who've gone before, but the people with really deep knowledge, particularly from my side in the technical space. I think, you know, you really can develop yourself, put the effort in, you know, ask the sensible questions and, you know, respond appropriately. And, you know, there's a lot of opportunity here, and it's not as scary as it might seem.
And Gerard?
Yeah, so again, technology company supplier to banks rather than in banking. But I think two things I've seen over the last couple of years especially is if you manage people, be very intentional about how you reach out to them. The sort of the opportunity, the serendipitous opportunity just to have a conversation with people, that's kind of gone. I'm hoping it's coming back, but it's kind of gone. If you're not managing people, find a mentor, find somebody. It doesn't have to be formal. You know, find someone within your network, talk to them within your network, learn from them. I think that, irrespective of the sector you're in, that you can learn, you can have powerful support from that.
Okay, I said it was a 2-in-1. The second part of this question is addressed to Nikki, but they've said here, as a young woman in finance, do you have any pieces of advice for how to progress your career to the senior management level you are in now and higher? You've given us some advice. What else would you like to add to the pot?
Yeah, I think absolutely knowing the right people, you know, having inspiring women. I've had some great inspirational women and that I've really looked up to that have really helped me. And I think it is a lot of the time it's like a bit of fake it till you make it. You might not be confident, but act like it because a man would. So, you know, and you know, I think I always try and think, what would a man do in this situation when if I am thinking about or nervous about something? And a lot of the time I'd be like, oh, they would just go for it. So I'll go for it. And a lot of, you know, what kind of women go through in finance is so kind of ingrained and based on systemic issues that actually you really do have to kind of stand back and look at yourself and go, right, if I was a friend going through that, what would I recommend that they do? Because it's very easy to go, oh, I'm not ready, or I can't do this, or I'm not sure. So I think, yeah, stand back, think about what your friends, what you'd recommend to a friend if they were in the same position, and ask, you know, how would a man respond to this? So yeah, that's what I try to do.
Okay, well, it's clearly succeeding. Let's move on now, because we've got another question here. Magic wand, what are you immediately getting rid of from today's banking experience? Don't make me choose, Gerard.
That's all right. I think back to the comments I made earlier about employees. I think that focus on employees has a knock-on effect to your customers and the customer experience. I've done a number of events recently. I've spoken to a number of CIOs in this space, CEOs, where they're talking about still bringing people into one office location, making them move to a, yeah, I loved moving to London. London was a great experience for me, but I think if we've learned nothing over the last 2 years, we can hire great people from great locations and they don't have to give up their whole life for that. I think the other thing is the competition for talent is so high now. And not only are banks competing with other financial institutions, they're competing with anyone who's looking for digital skills, and everyone is looking for digital skills. So I think some of the old concepts about where you work, how you work, when you work, I'd like to see those change.
Okay, would anyone else like to add to that before I move through the remaining questions? No?
I was just going to add one thing, which was around, I think, about treating people like they're like a monolithic group. So I think, you know, at Pay.UK, we're all about choice in payments. And yes, we run everything from the checks to, you know, instant bank transfers. So it's all about understanding that people are not, you know, monolithic, and actually being able to provide products that, you know, allow a broader, you know, customer experience. You know, as James said, around inclusivity, there are lots of products out there that we need to be more inclusive. So I think treating people as they are and allowing that more personalization rather than trying to, you know, get everybody to work back at the office or everybody to work at home. People are different and they need to be treated in that way.
Mm-hmm. Let's squeeze in one last question. Looking at the next 10 to 20 years, so your crystal ball gazing again, rather than what will change, what won't change? What will remain a constant which should underpin innovation for years to come? The I word. Matthew, that's just up your street.
I was going to say on the last question, but I think it's relevant here as well. I don't think fraud and the need to drive the security aspect, particularly in payments, but in all aspects of banking, how do we know who the person we're trading with or sending the cash to? We've got a lot of solutions to that today, but they're still not quite as integrated and quite as understandable to perhaps someone who's having a busy day and can't focus on them, or someone who's perhaps not very, isn't very familiar with the technology they're working with. That isn't going anywhere. And if anything, a more digital society will make that worse, and we need to focus on further investment and innovation there.
Okay, would anyone else like to add to that before I wrap the discussion? James?
Yeah, I guess I'll just add on to that point that what won't change. And I think I was really, when I entered the industry, I was really impressed by actually how purpose-driven the people were in the industry. And I think that won't change either. But how do we improve it more? And I think it's about getting more, within teams, we need people from all walks of life. So that's in terms of diversity in age, ethnicity, gender, because that way we really get people, we really get diversity of thinking within teams. And that helps with, addressing societal pain points and, continuing to drive forward purpose-led changes.
Mm-hmm. And Nikki, would you like to add to that, and Gerard?
Yeah, just to labour the point even more, is the customer being, the king. That's not going to change, and that will be here forever. So that's the only thing I would say.
Final word to Gerard.
Yeah, and customer trust in the organisation. So that is going to be a very important currency. It is now. We've gone through stages of trusting base metals to trusting central banks to trusting distributed ledgers and the institutions that surround them. We need to do that. So customers will absolutely gravitate to great customer experience, but if they lose that trust in an organisation for whatever reason, they'll go elsewhere.
Okay, so a sound note on which to end. I think you've all been absolutely magnificent, and clearly what you've said, it has resonated with our audience, which is why you all deserve a massive round of applause. Congratulations on being rising stars.